Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming Daniel Butler. Of course you all know he wrote that book, America's Dumbest Criminals, but he also was in several of the Ernest movies. His biggest role in the Ernest movies, of course, was playing Eddie the chef in Ernest Goes to Camp. He was also in Ernest Saves Christmas, Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Scared Stupid, and he also did a bunch of other things as well in acting. I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that stuff, and I can't wait. I love the Ernest movies, and it's going to be a great conversation. So yeah, here is my interview with Daniel Butler.
Hello, good morning there.
Good morning, Daniel. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Here in COVID land. I mean, this is the most exciting thing that's happened in 4 months, Tommy. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, sir. My pleasure. This is a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
No, I have a lot of that now.
Yeah. So, going back in time, I know that you've acted and you wrote a very popular book, but what was your early childhood trajectory? Were you focused on acting?
Well, okay. As the youngest of four, the only way I could get attention was to be funny. Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of set my trajectory from there. And of course, you immediately get into classroom clown and the editor of the 6th grade newspaper. And that was my thing. I discovered I could make people laugh. And that's what gave me the most joy. And that's how I got attention, really. And it just kept going. I'm about to turn 70 in January, and I'm about over my need for approval. But I did my first high school play was not until senior year, mm-hmm. And then I got drafted and did 2 years. I was a conscientious objector, so I served as an operating room orderly, 69, and got into and as a result of that, working in hospitals, went into a radiology program and became an X-ray tech. And so I worked in hospitals in the OR and ER radiology for 7 years. And so I took the natural progression. I went from radiology to radio. I did some Shakespeare in the Park here in Nashville, mm-hmm. And some radio guys saw me, and I started doing morning drive time radio as a sidekick. And that was amazing training because the disc jockey I worked for, he would not tell me what he was going to do. And he would just punch the button, the red light came on, and he said, we're here at the breakfast bar at Shoney's, and what's your name, sir? So I had to ad-lib constantly with that guy and create characters and come up with an entire backstory and something funny to say instantaneously. It was torture, but it was incredible training. I started a local comedy group, me and 4 other people, called Guns Up Theater, and we played the Exit In and made fun of everything Nashville. It was right after the first Saturday Night Live season. Yeah. And so some of us thought, hey, we can do that. We'll just do it without the cameras. And in Nashville at that period, Joan Tewksbury had just written the movie Nashville at the Exit In, and it was a really creative time. A lot of juices flowing here. And then it was John Cherry, the director, creator, and Coach Sam's, they were both producer, director on all the Ernest movies. Right. They came to see us at the Exit In, and I got hired as a writer. And that's how I came to Ernestville. But that was 36 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's been a while. wasn't until actually the first Ernest commercial was done 40 years ago this October. February 10th, this past February, was the 20th anniversary of Jim's passing.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, all these podcasters started calling, saying, hey, we want to talk to you about Ernest. Ernest Goes to Podcast, the importance of seeing Ernest.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, that was a day gig. It was a long time ago. And I finally gave in, only to realize that these people, the Ernest fans, knew and remembered so much more about it than I did. I was amazed. And it's all come back. And I'm working with them now on a documentary of Jim's life. His nephew, Justin Lloyd, wrote his biography, The Importance of Being Ernest, and the documentary is based on his book. And I got to spend February with Jim's family, and for the first time, really, and getting to know them. And it really is amazing when you have a friend and a coworker like Jim Varney, who you work with for almost 15 years. Right. You really think you know someone, you know?
Yeah.
And meeting his family and learning about his childhood and his insecurities, and it's like, wow, Jim, I barely knew yet. It's really been an interesting process, this 2020. So,
yeah, it's crazy. I remember hearing about the stuff, at the time of his death, and just like, wow, God, where'd that come from? Because he's such a loved guy, and I've heard nothing but good things about him in terms of his personality, and the way he treated people was so good,
Yeah, well, see, the amazing thing was, at what Phil Walden, who was Capricorn Records and the Allman Brothers,
right?
After he rehabbed from cocaine, Phil became Jim's manager, and he renegotiated the Ernest deal. And John Jerry, my boss, they just were at a total impasse and shut it all down. Mm-hmm. And this was right after Goes to Camp and all the commercials.
Yeah.
So we were like, oh my gosh, there were like 75 of us. We were going to be out of a job. Excuse me. And then Phil Walden calls me up. He's from Marietta, Georgia, and he goes, hey Butler, I got a gig for you, man. We want to tour Ernest to the state fair. And I was like, yeah. And I want you to write a 40-minute show, and we're going to do it at state fairs all over the country. And I asked my boss his permission, and he said, fine, yeah, go ahead. And that touring with Jim, and we did Ernest Goes to the Fair. Yeah. And it was just me and Jim. And the first place we went to was the Springfield, Illinois, the Illinois State Fair. And we followed the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They opened for us. And that was, it was basically 4 Broadway dancers in Ninja Turtle suits playing to a pre-recorded show, Mm-hmm. Then Jim and I would go on. And doing those state fairs, that was my first exposure to his fans. We were in a bubble here in Nashville doing the work. And when I went on the road with him, I was in Minneapolis, the Minnesota State Fair. He's riding on the back of the convertible. He's Grand Marshal of the Minnesota State Fair. And I'm up in the passenger seat, and women were running up, were screaming, Ernest, I just got divorced. I want you to marry me. And Barney looked down at me and said, she wants to have my baby. What a wonderful way of saying how much she loves me. And people were running up to him with their babies to kiss their babies. And we'd do these shows at the State Fair, and then like 3,000 people would line up for autographs. And Jim, he wouldn't leave. And we were there for 3 know, him signing autographs and taking pictures with people.
Yeah.
And that's when I began to realize the impact that he had on people. And it was, still amazes me.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, so getting into the Ernest movies, the first one that everyone says that was the first Ernest movie was Dr. Otto in The Riddle of the Gloom Beam, but he's kind of a minor character in that one, though.
I know. I did see that was, I would think a marketing error in retrospect.
Yeah.
But I think it was really, Coach Sam's put it best when he said Jim was a thoroughbred and we're using him to plow fields because he was so incredibly talented. And his dream really was to be Peter O'Toole.
Yeah.
When the documentary, when we get that done, you'll realize what his real dreams were. And I think, and Buster and John Cherry, that was his nickname, Buster, and Coke really wanted to become filmmakers,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think they wanted to show Jim's range because he plays like 12 characters in Dr. Otto.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just our opportunity to break out of the Ernest haiku and get really crazy.
Yeah.
And it was really crazy. I had the privilege of playing Willie, the homemade robot.
Yeah.
And a Secret Service agent. But the thing about the entire Ernest phenomenon was that it was a family affair. It was like a children's crusade. The ad agency was like maybe 50 people, and you had to wear many hats. A lot of the people in the movie and the movies and the commercials were women who worked in accounting, and just everybody. So it was very much a family affair, and that almost everyone that worked at Country Cherry was in Dr. Otto. And it was their way. Buster was going to break the Hollywood paradigm, and the way he distributed that was Family Album. Actually, the Family Album was the first attempt, really, and we distributed that using the sponsors that were using the Ernest characters, syndicating it around the country with them advertising the movie. So coming off of Ernest Family Album on television, boom, they said, we can do an indie movie. And Ernest was literally in the opening sequence and the final sequence, and which outraged the Ernest fans.
I remember seeing the movie on USA Up All Night when I was a kid, and just going, okay, where's Ernest,
Yeah, pissed off,
Yeah.
Know what I mean? He wasn't there. What happened? And, But then, and I'm sure you know the story of Michael Eisner and the Indianapolis 500.
Yes.
Yeah, that was just, timing, go figure. And it was all because Michael Eisner was the Grand Marshal of the parade for the Indy 500, and he said at Disney, and 10 cars back, Ernest comes in, and we had a client in Indianapolis for the commercials. And Ernest got a bigger roar from the crowd than Michael Eisner. So he immediately said, find out who that guy is. So that was a fluke, but a great one.
Yeah, that's crazy. And in Ernest Goes to Camp, you play Eddie the chef, who's sidekick to Gaylord Sartain as Chuck. Did Jim write that for you?
No. That was, the director, John Cherry, called me the night before they were supposed to shoot Chuck. See, we did syndicated commercials with Gaylord, and it was Chuck and Bobby. Mm-hmm. And Bobby was Bill Burge, a man who worked here in the Nashville Library. And Bill had a real high-pitched voice, and he talked real fast like this.
Yeah.
And Disney told Buster, we can't understand that man. Okay,
Yeah.
You've got to get somebody who speaks English for Gaylord to play off of. So they literally called me the night before the first shoot of Chuck and Eddie in Ernest Goes to Camp and said, "Get your butt out here. You're a cook. You're a camp cook." And it was Barney and Gaylord. And I'm just like, I'm nervous. and I'm in the RV with Gaylord and Jim. And I said, what am I going to do, guys? Who is this character? What am I doing? I don't know what to do. And they were like, and they were just messing with me big time. Gaylord said, well, first of all, I think you should shave your head. And I was like, shave my head? He said, yeah, SAG, you'll get extra bump up in money if you shave your head. And Barney was going, yeah, bald. I think I like that. And then Gaylord said, yeah, and do the voice of the Jim Backus character on Gilligan's Island. What was his name?
Oh, Thurston Howell. Yeah.
So it was like, yes, wow, gosh, gee. And I said, really? Okay. And they were just messing with me, man. And it was bizarre. It was that whole shoot. I mean, we were at the funniest story about camp, though, for me, was we had rented this entire Montgomery Bell State Park outside of Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all the cabins, and we're using the whole place for a set. Well, we got down, we had a week left to shoot, but we've run out of time. Mm-hmm. And the park officials, we go to the park officials, we need another week. And they said, well, we've got another group coming in.
Yeah.
And they've reserved the space. And they said, well, we don't need the cabins. It's just that final battle scene. And, we won't stay here. We just need to shoot this battle scene. It'll take us 3 days, and maybe they just let us shoot around them. And they said, well, you're going to have to talk to them. And that their group had just come in. And it was a group of Mennonites. And they were having a religious retreat. And we explained, it's this family movie, and we've got to shoot this battle scene, but it's not guns or anything. It's like catapult launching toilets and parachuting turtles, and it's a comedy, and it's family, and these guys with beards and hats, and the women had bonnets, and they said, we need to talk and pray about this. And they went into the group cabin, and there was a couple of hours, and we're just out pacing up and down, going, where are we going to shoot this battle scene?
Yeah.
They say no. And the Mennonites come back out, their leaders, and they said, we've agreed to let you shoot the battle scene with one criteria. And we're like, yes, what? Whatever you want. What do you want us to do? And they said, we'd like to be in it. So in the final battle scene of Ernest Goes to Camp, you will see Mennonites. It was bizarre.
Gaylord is so hilarious. The way they put those sound effects in when he moves his eyes around.
Oh,
every time.
Buddy. And in real life, you don't understand. Gaylord, oh my gosh. My favorite moment with Gaylord, when we were actually, Gaylord and I went to L.A. together to loop some of our lines for Disney in L.A. Mm-hmm. And while we were there, Katzenberg and Marty Ehrlichman, who was Buster's manager and also Barbra Streisand's manager, mm-hmm. set up the Disney deal. And Buster and Coke, and they invited Gaylord and I to go to lunch while we were out there looping lines. And we're in this back room, the power room of Le Cirque, or it was some, really swanky LA restaurant. Mm-hmm. And Gaylord and I are there with Katzenberg and these big shots around this big table eating. And Gaylord said, excuse me, I got to go to the restroom. Mm-hmm. And he goes, restroom, and he comes back, and he walks through the entire dining room to
Yeah.
he had toilet paper, almost an entire roll of toilet paper stuck to his shoe. It was dragging. In the middle of the restaurant, he stops and he goes, "Oh, crap, I forgot to unzip again." And it was just, I mean, he would do that. He would do stuff in public, man, that would just like, if you were with him, you would go, I don't know him.
Yeah.
I've never met him. He was just insanely funny all the time, though.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant.
And an amazing painter. Most people don't realize that Gaylord Sartain is a really great artist.
Yeah. I bet, a guy like that who's that brilliant, he's got to be versatile in other things, What was that Eggs Erroneous for real?
It's funny, and somewhere I've got a VHS tape that Buster sent me because it's the whole crew, and it's this crew that I've been working with for 8 years at that point.
Yeah.
And, we're all buddies. We go way back, right?
Yeah.
So now, here comes a take where they all get to throw food at me. Right? So Buster says action, and everybody grabbed food. Just everybody started throwing food at me. And he lets it roll for about 3 minutes. I got that little colander trying to block the food, and he yells, "Cut!" And they don't stop. And they keep throwing food. He had to yell, "Cut!" 3 or 4 times before that, and everybody's just laughing hysterically. Just the ultimate food fight. But I was unarmed. It was not fair. But he sent me a VHS of that very long food fight, and it was a great moment, though. Big fun.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah, I had Victoria Racimo on last year, who played the chief's daughter.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, I loved her.
She's a sweetheart. Yeah. Oh God, we had a great time.
She was the voice of reason on that shoot, buddy. She was the same mother of us all.
Oh God, I'm gonna send this to her. She's gonna love hearing that.
She had such a peaceful presence. There's some people that are just like that, that just exude kindness and patience and understanding. And she put up with a lot of very juvenile men.
Yeah.
God bless her.
Oh, she's like one of the guys in general. I mean, we were laughing a lot. We talked for over 80 minutes, and we were just laughing most of the way through. I also interviewed one of the juveniles, Patrick Day. It was the kid with the necktie, and the mullet. Yeah, he's great. Oh, he told me about 5 years after he did the movie, he was at 20th Century Fox going to an audition, and the Beverly Hillbillies was being shot, and he saw Jim, and Jim saw him like a mile away and was like, "Patrick," and then they like hugged and had a nice little talk and stuff. Yeah.
That's the thing about Jim. He made everyone feel special, and he saved my butt.
Yeah.
I had been to one writing session at the agency.
Yeah.
And had visited the one Ernest commercial shoot, and my wife's in-laws were Oklahoma City, and Blom's Ice Cream in Oklahoma City was one of our biggest clients. And I told them, "Hey, I'm writing for Ernest," and I'd only done one session,
Mm-hmm.
And so we go out there with our oldest boy, who's 40 now. We go out there with the baby, see the in-laws, and my father-in-law, who was a high school principal and a Southern Baptist minister, and a big Ernest fan, as everybody in Oklahoma was, said, "Hey, your buddy Ernest is going to be down at the Brahms signing autographs today. I want you to take me down and introduce me." And I was just like, "Oh, crap. Jim doesn't know me from beans." And I said, "Well, there's probably going to be a really big crowd, and you know, and I was trying to get out of it, and he goes, no, come on, let's go, we're going. And we get there, and there's a line of 200 people, and Jim's up there sitting at a table, and I mean, we met maybe 3 times at the most for a minute, and he looks up from signing autographs and sees me back in the line with my father-in-law and my baby, and he goes, Mr. Butler, get your butt up here, man. And everybody turns and looks at me like I'm somebody, and my father-in-law, and I go up there with my baby, and he goes, Message, and I said, this is my father-in-law, Trevor Dowdy, and oh, Mr. Dowdy, your boy is, he's going to be writing movies for Disney. And I was like, really? And I mean, I could not believe he did that. And but he did that with so many people. When we were doing the state fair thing, we landed in Minneapolis, and Jim does not look at all like Ernest. All right, he's got an earring, a long suede shaft leather coat.
Yeah.
His hair was really done, and we're cruising through the Minneapolis airport, and there's this like 40-year-old guy at a shoe shine stand, the shoe shine guy, and across the terminal he screams out, Ernest, my man! And Jim just made a beeline over to him. And he was so not our demographic, I thought,
Yeah.
He was an African-American. Jim was playing a redneck,
Yeah.
But there was an article last year in an online literary magazine called The Bitter Southerner.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten the author's name, but he really nailed it when he pointed out that of all the people that had played rednecks, Cable Guy, Jeff Foxworthy, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Jim Varney and Ernest was the only portrayal of a redneck that children loved.
Oh, it's interesting.
That's really what sets him apart.
Mm-hmm.
That children could love a dumb redneck.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't like a white trash, kind of a redneck. I think that a lot of white trash rednecks are portrayed in entertainment. He was way different than that. He was like, your cousin or your neighbor, who was a complete buffoon. That's more mass appealing, I think.
Yeah, well, it was particularly for me, and I'm hoping my relatives won't hear this podcast, but we were stealing lines from our relatives. The crazy drunk uncle, the cousin from Athens, Georgia. We all had one. So yeah, we were writing those people down, basically with Jim. But Jim could make anything funny. As a writer, he was, just golden to write for because he could take your worst work and make it something wonderful. So
yeah, such a
a
talented.
lot of the times we would let him just riff and ad lib, and Buster would say, "Take notes, write this down." And that was writing for Ernest. But,
yeah, how was the experience making Hey Vern, It's Ernest?
wow, it was that was a lot of fun. Particularly for me, because at that time, I was the youngest writer. Glenn Petak, Steve Lazier, Gil Templeton, and Buster and Coke and Jim, they developed the Ernest haiku in the first 3 years. They had the character down. He found his voice, so I was a latecomer. But when it came to the Hey Vern, It's Ernest, the CBS show, I was the only person that had done more long-form stuff in clubs and radio. And I was the only one who had school-age children at the time. And so I got to have a lot of input in that because I had boys 12 and 5 years old at the time. So I was the only parent in the room. And and I think my greatest contribution to that was, for instance, on the Scary Things episode, I mean, they were, okay, we're going to go ghosts and goblins and demons and Dutch, and I was like, yeah, that's been done a lot. And what about the things, the real things that kids are really scared of, like the basement and the attic and the boogeyman and haircuts and, and I think that was my biggest contribution, other than Earl the barber.
Yeah.
And Earl, you have to understand, we had like four to six writers, and Glenn was the head writer, and we were supposed to be turning in, sketches every day. And we got a suite at the Union Station Hotel here in Nashville to get us out of the agency so we could concentrate. And Deke, who was our distributor to CBS, we would have to fax them, and then the next morning we would send around a conference called speakerphone and hear their judgment on the sketches we had submitted. And the pace, the quantity that we were supposed to be sending was so overwhelming that Earl the barber I came up with, because all I had to do was change 2 words every week. and the women in props had to make those, and they made the sketch. They made those incredible, Oriental Typhoon. I told you I wanted to look like a Wall Street tycoon. Oh, I thought you said Oriental Typhoon. And they made those head pieces that were just hysterical. And that was wonderful. Not so wonderful was playing Ernest's tongue. Are you familiar with the tongue?
I vaguely remember the tongue.
Well, it was just, Roy London at Deke, who was doing thumbs up and thumbs down on our sketches. When I was a kid, I read, there was a segment in Reader's Digest and they would write segments from the first-person point of view of a human organ. So it was like, I'm Joe's heart. And it would be your heart telling you how it worked and all that. And I was just at my wit's end, and I went, I'm Ernest Tongue. And man in a 6-foot foam rubber tongue suit with only his face, leans up into camera and talks about Ernest's eating and drinking habits. And it starts, I'm Ernest Tongue. And it was a joke, and I thought I thought Glenn would just get a big laugh out of it and throw it in the trash can. Well, I show up the next morning, we get on the conference call with Deke, and Roy London said, who wrote the tongue? I was just like, oh my gosh. Oh no, it was me. And he said, I love the tongue. We want more tongue.
Oh, it's hilarious.
And I almost died when we shot it, because the setup was, at the end of the shoot, I would say, eat the green beans, Ernest, eat the green beans. Not the dip, not the nachos, not the dip. No. And I would lean up, and 2 crew members with 2 40-gallon Rubbermaid trash cans with slightly diluted refried beans. They poured 80 gallons of refried beans onto my face in this 6-foot foam rubber tongue suit. Mm-hmm. And of course, it went into my eyes, my ears, my nose, my mouth, and I was drowning from refried beans. And I was, and for about 30 seconds, and Buster finally said, cut, I think he's dying.
Yeah.
They had to put straws up my nose, and it was a near-death experience playing Ernest Tongue.
I think if you guys were on another network, it would have gone on a little bit longer. I think that because Pee-wee's Playhouse was so popular on Saturday mornings on CBS, that's probably why it didn't last that long.
No, totally. See, and what they did was, I mean, Pee-wee at the prime time Saturday morning, 9 a.m., and they put us in a laughing.
Yeah.
And we were at the end of the cartoons, you know, and for like, I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we got preempted by college football playoffs or something, and bowl games or something. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. Pee-wee killed Ernest.
Yeah.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
As far as television was concerned.
Yeah.
So the other thing about the Hey Ernest Ernest thing, there was a contractual, because of our agreement with Disney, we had a 6-picture development deal. And I was head of motion picture and television development. So as part of the deal, I had to send them, I think it was every 8 weeks, I had to send them 3 Ernest and 3 non-Ernest treatments for films. And when the CBS offer came for a Saturday morning children's show, Disney said, whoa, you can't do that. And we were saying, oh, come on, it's going to help the movies, you know, and da-da-da-da-da. And they said, Disney, Katzenberg finally said, okay, you can do the show, the Saturday morning show, but you cannot do a linear story.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why it had to be sketch.
Yeah.
So that's why we had to, and of course we kind of got around that, but so it was scary things and clothes and outer space, you know?
Yeah.
But we ended up, so it was all just sketches about outer space or scary things, because Disney said it could not be a linear story. Contractual lawyers, go figure.
That's strange. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you had small parts in Ernest Saves Christmas and Ernest Goes to Jail, but in Ernest Scared Stupid, you came back in a pretty big part.
Yeah, Sheriff Cliff Binder. And that was really Buster and Coke, just thinking that I had great acting ability and wanting to help me and my career. What was funny about it was that and Buster, he insisted on me playing the sheriff. And we had to cast Kenny, Sheriff Cliff Binder's boy, and who was the lead kid, you know. And so Buster said, I want you to go out to L.A. and to help cast your son in the movie so you have some chemistry. So great, okay, yeah, free trip to L.A. So I go out, and I go in with the Disney casting office, and they're bringing in, before they brought in the kids, one of the casting directors said, you know, we didn't want you to play Sheriff Cliff Binder. And I was like, okay? And they said, in fact, we had another Dan Butler that we wanted to play him. He showed me his headshot. And I remembered a couple of years before, after I joined SAG, one day they called me up and said, do you still want to be Daniel Butler? And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, someone else has joined, and they want to be Daniel Butler. Would you rather be Dan? And I said, no, my name is Daniel. He can change his name. And he went as Dan Butler. Well, Dan Butler played Bulldog on Frasier and went on to a huge career, and IMDb would mix up our credits sometimes. So Disney wanted Dan Butler, and Buster insisted on Daniel Butler. Yeah, it was an interesting place for an actor to find himself in. But that was great fun. And working with the trolls.
My dad pulled me out of school early on Halloween to go see that movie. And it was a full theater. the energy in there was intense. People were loving this movie. I mean, people were just cracking up, right? A year later, I see the movie on Showtime. The movie scared the shit out of me because there wasn't a whole lot of contagious laughter in the theater, without it.
Yeah, yeah. It was amazing. It was just the stories, gosh. And working with the little people, at Jim's memorial service, where I was honored to speak, I had to tell the story about, I'm 6'4", okay?
Yeah.
And so Jim and I were sitting in like director's chairs, and we were eating lunch, and we were surrounded by 35 little people. Everyone was under 4 feet tall, except for me and Jim. And Jim and I were talking about, we were competing as to who could do the best old Jewish guy. And he said, no. Jim said, look, this is what you got to do. You got to say this 2 words without closing your mouth. And all the trolls are watching us and listening. And Jim says, area rug. The words area rug without closing your mouth. That's how you do an old Jewish guy. And so now I'm sitting here, and there's me and Jim and all the trolls, and we're all going, following him like a teacher. And we had some wild times with Tarantula, too. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom Cadenhead plays a different character than Gaylord. Do you think Gaylord just didn't want to do it anymore?
Well, it was, was it Fried Green Tomatoes?
Oh.
No, Mississippi Burning.
Okay.
He was cast as the sheriff, and the funniest story he told me from that, the director, I forget his name, was famous English or Irish director.
Alan Parker.
Yes.
Yes.
Mississippi Burning. And Gaylord said, I went over to him and between shots, and I said, Mr. Parker, why did you cast me? Did you see some untapped dramatic talent? Because I've always played comedy, and this is such a serious role. And Alan Parker looked at him and said, actually, Gaylord, you look like a racist son of a bitch. And Gaylord was like, yeah, okay, I knew that. Yeah, okay. But then he went on Fried Green Tomatoes with Kathy Bates, and I think he really, and his agent really wanted to, stretch his chops and do some drama.
How was Eartha Kitt on the movie?
Oh my gosh. One of the most amazing women I've ever met in my life. This was sitting with her, and she was in the process of writing a memoir at the time.
Yeah.
And you realize, after the luncheon in 1968 at the White House, Lady Bird Johnson and Eartha came out afterwards and made the statement about the war in Vietnam and sending our young people off to die and civil rights. And she was, using a racist term, blackballed, and could not get work. And so she had to move to Europe and spent most of her adult life in Europe. And Ernest, Scared Stupid, was her first job in the United States, coming back. And she was really unsure of what she was doing. But I'll never forget, one day I'm sitting with her, and she's working on her memoir, and she said, and she told me the story of having this biracial daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and she could not, white women would not give her house cleaning jobs if they saw her biracial daughter. And so she had to hide her daughter in the woods and they would sleep in the woods, and she would hide her daughter in the woods and go up to the white women's house and get work. And while she was telling me the story, this Italian multimillionaire and his magnificently beautiful wife with the baby walk onto the set. And there was a kid. Gosh, I'm going to cry. She touched my arm and she said, "That's the little girl." And it was her daughter and her grandbaby. And to see what and hear from Eartha Kitt herself what she had been through in her life, and then to see this wealthy, magnificently beautiful, just intelligent, gracious little girl that she had hidden in the woods, man, to get a job from the white women, was just a moment. I mean, gosh, I was such a privilege to be there at that moment. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that coming. But Eartha was, what a woman, buddy. And the thing was, you know how she purred like a cat?
Yeah.
That woman? She
Yeah.
said it like that. She said, when she saw her daughter coming in, she said, "And that's the little girl." She purred it out. And it was, gosh, what a moment.
That's a beautiful story. I like that, Daniel. That's great.
Oh, you can't make that stuff up, man.
Yeah. Now, after Ernest Scared Stupid, though, Jim's deal with Disney was over. He went to Canada and made the rest of the movies there and stuff. Did you just cut ties with him?
Oh, no. See, I was still, on the Canadian films,
Mm-hmm.
I was so pumped about that because I'd always wanted to go to Canada. I almost dodged the draft and went up there when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
I was so psyched about that. And Buster said, "I want you to stay here and to keep watch on the agency and continue with the television development and drum up some more business for movies and television." So I didn't get to go to Vancouver. I got to be one of the writers, and I got to get together writers for those 3 scripts, and but I never got to go to Vancouver, so I didn't get to hang out with them up there. And I did not go. Buster asked me to play Stan Laurel in his Laurel and Hardy film that he made in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really pumped about that. I've always wanted to go to Africa. And my wife was 7 months pregnant, and she said, "If you think I'm having this baby in South Africa, you're out of your mind." So I had to turn that one down, but I'm kind of glad I did. Buster, I don't think John Cherry, again, that was his nickname, when he stopped getting notes from Disney, the quality of his work went down. He became an auteur in his own mind, and called all the shots, and there was just nobody to give him notes.
Yeah. That's sad. That happens sometimes, unfortunately. But what's the genesis behind America's Dumbest Criminals?
Oh, gosh. It was when I did Morning Drive Time Radio, my general manager, Vic Rumor, started a video company, and they sold, they were stockhouse. So all those, back in the day, this was 93, 94, they did flyovers of all the cities, so all the news departments bought all those beauty shots of cities from him, and they just had all video stock footage, and they were stockhouse. But he did one tape, a VHS home video, we called them, and it was about near-death experiences. and advertised it in the back of Parade magazine. And you had to fill out a little coupon and send your check in the mail to buy the VHS tape. But he sold over 1 million VHS tapes. So Vic called me up and said, "Hey, Butler," he was from Mississippi, "I want you to do, I got making all this money on these home videos. Why don't you come up with some?" And I was like, "Yeah, Vic, yeah." And he said, "I'll give you, I got $30,000 if you can do an hour video." So I sat down with my buddies Leland Gregory and Alan Ray at Mongo Java Coffee Shop here in Nashville. And at that time, my wife and I, we had date night on Saturday night. The top movies, the top TV shows were Cops and America's Most Wanted, 93, 94.
Right.
And we would let my older son babysit little brother. And when we get back from date night, they'd be scared crazy. Dad, I think I saw this guy at the grocery store. He was on America's Most Wanted. And I was like, dudes, no, wait, slow down, guys. And when we sat down at the coffee shop, we were like, well, what's hot? Cops and America's Most Wanted. Well, let's do the comedy version. And so what we originally came up with was making up totally fiction comedy, dumb crimes, and just, like Ernest becomes a criminal, basically. And we decided, well, we've got to get a cop to host it. So we got the Metro Nashville cops. We called them in for auditions. And the cops were so nervous. They could not speak. Even officers involved in shootouts and firefights and hostage situations, when you put a camera on them, they freeze. So I started just saying, okay, wait, well, tell us about the dumbest criminal you ever ran into, or what's the worst excuse or alibi you ever heard. And I made the Danny Ross, the cameraman, I said, just put a piece of tape over the red light. I'm going to tell them we're not rolling. And so we were just shooting the breeze, right?
Right.
So they're going, oh, man, I have this one guy, and started telling the real stories. And they're hysterical, and we could believe it. And then really the origin story for America's Dumbest Criminals, and this was the period, remember, Hugh Grant had gotten busted with the prostitutes, Senator Packwood was busted for sexual harassment, but they got off, and the O.J. Simpson trial was just starting.
Right.
And, there was a real sense of there is no justice, and if you're rich, you can get away with anything, and yada, yada, yada. And I think it was Leland Gregory who found this clip of a story where the two guys in Phoenix, Arizona, taking off the license plate of the car and filed the numbers off their gun, and it done, really thought out this crime. And one stays in the car, keeps the car running. He goes into this hot stop convenience store, Circle K, and it had just been shift change. Was about to be shift change at the Circle K.
Yeah.
And the guy hands the lady a $20 bill and says, "Can you change this for me?" And she said, "Sure." She takes his 20 and opens the cash drawer. And he pulls his gun and says, "Give me the cash drawer." And she said, but, and he said, "Give me the cash drawer, I'll shoot." So she says, "Okay." And she gives him the cash drawer. He runs out, he jumps in the car. His getaway driver, his partner, says, "How much did we get?" And the guy's sitting there, $8. And he said, "Where's my 20? The clerk still has it. They lost $12 in a robbery. And it just blew our minds, It was the antithesis of the success, the perfect crime. They literally paid the woman $12 to rob her. So we just started. So we got my van. We had 2 vans. We had there were 4 of us, and we started going around to police stations. Mm-hmm. And I had to talk my don't want new deaths. We don't want violence. We don't want sex. We just want the idiots. And they had the stories. I mean, it was just never ending. And the retired cops. And we ended up, 106 half hours, New York Times best-selling book, and it was a real education, going from police station to police station, and from Fort Lauderdale to Seattle and San Diego to New York and little towns in between. And doing ride-alongs, and I don't know if you've ever spent an entire day in a police station, but gosh, it's hard work. It's amazing. And it was great to see police officers getting to laugh, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I've seen that.
It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that must have been just exciting to have one of the biggest selling books of all time.
Well, I still don't understand that, other than the fact that the mood in the country at the time, just wanted some relief from, and all the networks turned it down. They did put it out as a home video, but it didn't do much in the back page of Parade magazine as a home video. And so he said, go pitch it to television. Well, all the networks said, reality television is over. It had been 911 and Emergency, and those were the reality shows of the period. And they said, no, that's over. And besides, you cannot do crime and comedy. You just can't do that. And it was World Division Syndication that was owned by Aaron Spelling.
Yeah.
Who said, we'll syndicate this market by market. And, I mean, besides the name, you got it. As soon as you heard the name, you got it. And you would laugh. But also, it was Paul Gendreau, the publicist. He had been the publicist for The Simpsons with Fox. And he started his own media company, and we were his first clients. And he got me radio interviews and television just everywhere. And I would spend from 5 a.m. till 10 a.m. doing morning drive time interviews from the East Coast to the West Coast. And afternoons, 2 to 6 p.m. Afternoon drive, coast to coast. And it was the gatekeepers for television syndication at the time were L.A. and New York. And there was no way L.A. or New York was going to, buy a stupid show like that.
Yeah.
It was very low budget. And it was the KMBC, Los Angeles, I think. And the guy came to me at the NATBE show, this television trade show. And he signed us, and that broke the dam, and we became syndicated in like 128 markets in the U.S. and 25 foreign countries. But it was him hearing me on the radio on his commute into L.A. and him laughing his ass off, which made him put his job on the line to sign America's Dumbest Criminals. I was recently asked, since the pandemic, because there's no production going on and there's going to be this huge dearth of content, Brian Lacey, who did the farm distribution, asked me to Quibi it. You familiar with Quibi?
I've heard of it.
Katzenberg has just started this platform called Quibi. It's 7-minute to 20-minute short, basically telephone content. And Brian called me and he said, "Hey, Katzenberg needs content for Quibi, Quibi."
Yeah.
And after I asked, what the hell is Quibi? money sounded great. My son is a producer and doing very well, and I went to Max and I said, can I do this now? I mean, since George Floyd and everything else that's going on in the country now, yeah, how do you do that? And I had to turn him down because it's just, it had its time and it was right for that time. But, you know, I think America's Dumbest Cops would probably work much better now than Dumbest Criminals. But I just personally and morally and politically, and I don't know, as a father and a grandfather, I guess now that I'm a grandfather, I just couldn't get back into that and redo it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, at least you gave it your best shot. You know, you gave it your all when it happened because it was a product of its time.
No, you have no idea. When you say gave it your all, it was hell, buddy.
Yeah.
It was 18, 20-hour days, and I was trying to wear way too many hats because we were so low budget. I mean, literally, besides being the host and writing and interviewing the police officers on the road, because of our budget, I played every dumb criminal in a face mask or in drag just to keep the budget down. And I had to withdraw from SAG to do the hosting, which was a very bad mistake, just because of the budget and trying to get it done and get it in. I mean, they gave us 3 months to do 26 half hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It takes a great toll on your family life, your personal relationships, and everything else. It was a bear.
Wow, that's crazy. So you mentioned before about that other Daniel Butler. Just to clarify,
Dan, excuse me, he's Dan.
Dan Butler.
I'm Daniel.
Yeah.
Well, wait, and I have to explain further. Dan Butler is gay, and he did a one-man show off Broadway, New York, and called, I think it was The Life, and he was coming out, and it was about being gay.
Yeah.
And so there were all these reviews and things. Dan Butler comes out. Dan Butler. And so, and I'm a dad, you know, and I go to church. My kids are in school, and all my friends in New York and LA are sending me these clippings. Dan comes out. You know? So he's kind of my evil twin. I don't know. But you were saying, I'm sorry, Dan Butler.
Yeah, so you're not the Dan Butler who was in 10 or 88?
No, that was me, yes. Oh, gosh, getting to work with Robert Allman, dude.
Yeah, what was that like?
Oh, my gosh. He was, well, okay, I mean, and the fact, the way he did it, I mean, Gary Trudeau was literally faxing script every day. And he was shooting it. We were having a Tennessee primary, and Allman was just going, he was following the primaries. And I don't know if you've seen it, then you know our candidate, Tanner, would just walk up and shake hands with Gary Hart and the other candidates.
It's been years since I've seen it.
Shake hands and go along with it. And Allman was shooting. And I got on as one of the reporters, and as an extra. And we would ride the bus, and Altman hired real sound men. Mm-hmm. Peter Curlin, an old buddy, who he got hired too. And he said, all right, I want you to run your Nagra, your sound, with a boom in the back of the bus, wherever you're seated in the bus, because I want to pick up, and I want everybody in character, and I want you improvising all the time. So, I mean, this was your shot to get a bump up to a speaking role and go from $50 a day to $250 a day and maybe more. So I grabbed Peter, and now Peter has gone on. He's been nominated for 4 Academy Awards for the Coen brothers.
Right.
And I grabbed Peter and I said, Peter, you sit in the seat in front of me and point that microphone towards me. And we got to make up our own names, our own newspapers. And we would just ad-lib like crazy in this press box. And one night we were shooting at like 1 a.m. in the morning, and it was really cold. And I know this is against SAG rules, but as an extra reporter on the bus, I got one of the PAs, and I said, dude, here's $10. Go get me a half pint of cognac. Because I knew we were going to be out in the cold all night. It's against union rules to drink on the job. It's the only time I did it. And I had no lines. Mm-hmm. So the PA brings me back a pint of Remy, 110, and I put in my overcoat jacket, get on the bus, and we go out in the middle of nowhere. And the scene was the press bus breaks down.
Yeah.
And the reporters, the feature reporters, who were the main actors, they were sitting down playing a card game on their suitcases. They were playing poker, waiting for the bus to be fixed. Mm-hmm. And the end of the scene is somebody hears that Tanner has been shot. There was an assassination attempt on the candidate.
Right.
So Altman sets it up, and he's saying, all right, wait, these are reporters, they're playing poker, where are the bottles? I need bottles, whiskey bottles. And the props guy goes, what? And runs away, and he comes back, and he's got a wine bottle. And Altman just goes off, wine? You think reporters drink wine? Where do they carry a bottle this big? I need whiskey. I need pint bottles. And I'm sweating bullets, thinking, all right, this could end your career, or it can make your career. And finally I said, Mr. Ellman? And he turned around, and he's pissed off, and everybody looks at me, and I go, you mean one like this? And I pull out my pint of Remy Martin, and he just smiles, he walks over, and he says, what's your name? And I said, Daniel Butler. And I haven't been drinking. He said, wait, come on, you're playing poker. And he sat me down with the main act, the feature actors, and I got to play poker because I had the pint of whiskey. And from then on, he let me ad-lib, I got to go to dailies at the end of each day, and gosh, I just fell in love with him. And his son, I forget his first name, but he was art director on it. And it was one family moment for me. We go back to the Maxwell House Hotel in Nashville, and we're getting ready to watch dailies. And his son, the art director, brings him a huge spleef, a huge joint. Mm-hmm. And Robert Altman starts smoking a joint.
I'm not surprised.
Ready to watch dailies. And I was like, dude, you're so old. And he goes, try the weed. I was like, oh, okay. He was amazing, an amazing man.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard nothing but great stories about him as a director. Personal things, not so much, but as a director, yeah, that's so cool.
Letting actors just run wild, buddy. But I gotta tell you, I asked him. Mm-hmm. We're sitting around, and after the day, and I said, "What is he just finished 12 Angry Men on Broadway, the only play he'd done with Eric Bogosian, all these heavy hitter actors." And I said, "Mr. Altman, what is the best performance you ever saw?"
Yeah.
And without hesitation, he said, it was in the parking lot of the Hungry Eye in San Francisco in 1960-something.
Yeah.
And I said, in the parking lot? And he said, yeah. Jonathan Winters was playing the Hungry Eye.
Yeah.
And between sets, we went out and sat in the car and smoked a joint. And Jonathan Winters did the entire Civil War. And he said it was historically accurate. He did all the male and female characters, and he did the entire Civil War for me. And I was the only person who saw that performance. And it was like, wow, dude.
Yeah.
That was something.
Yeah. Did you do What Comes Around with Jerry Reed?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Forgot about that one. Yeah, Jerry Reed. And I played a cop. And the greatest fun of that was I had to do it. It was my first chase scene. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to jump in my police car and I'm chasing them down an alley of Music Row, on Music Row in Nashville, behind all the studios and songwriter houses. Yeah. And that alley has a lot of little hills and bumps, and you know, when you cross a street, and they blocked off all the cross streets. And I'm driving, I'm in a cop uniform, and I get to drive a cop car, man. It was like the coolest thing. But there's this like Metro like captain who's giving me his car to drive, and he goes, "All right, don't go too fast. Do not bottom out my patrol car." And I was like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But I do have to chase him." And he goes, "Yeah, chase him, but when you hit the streets, you know, ease up. Don't bottom her out." And he said, "Oh, and by the way, the tilt-the-wheel adjustment on the steering wheel is broken, so it's going to go up and down." So I get in, and I start to chase this van, and they're on the walkie-talkie to me, and the director is saying, "Close in on him, get closer to it." And I'm speeding up, and I'm hitting those cross streets, man, just ba-ding, and getting air, and the steering wheel is going up and down. And it was great fun, and Jerry Reed was just amazing. And also, yeah, I just come off of Dr. Otto, like 2 weeks before. Yeah. Where our catering was a loaf of bread and salami or bologna, right? Mm-hmm. Dr. Otto was low budget. And I show up for, what was it? What was the name of the movie?
Oh, What Comes Around.
Jerry Reed's the film?
Yeah, What Comes Around.
What Comes Around. I kept thinking every which way but loose. What Comes Around. I go to that set, and they put me in an RV, my own RV, which was heaven. And then it came lunchtime, and they had lobster and steak, and Jerry Reed was next to me in line. I said, "Mr. Reed, can I have both?" He said, you get whatever you want, man. Get you some food. And my wife was in residency at the time, and we had a brand new baby, and she was making $15,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And I ate my weight in food on that movie.
Wow.
Big fun with him.
Yeah, that's so cool. So what do you do now when COVID isn't going on?
Wow. Well, it's the Ernest, the importance of being Ernest, the documentary.
Yeah.
Buster, I went through 15 years of Parkinson's with my own mother, and Buster was diagnosed with Parkinson's when he was 54, but he didn't tell any of us. And last summer, I was going to go to the main island trail, which is a kayak to a memory unit last October, November, and that's when the podcasters David Pagano and Aaron Natal of Ernest Goes to Podcast, and David said, I want to do the documentary. And Buster has all of the scripts, storyboards, and props, and Trantor's head, it's in that bedroom, and
yeah.
It's the Ernest wall. It's his life's work is up there. And I said, well, look, there's this, and there's this, and there's that. And they said, will you please help us with the documentary? And so I spent the last year going to talking to Josh and the Cherry family and Matt Carden, Joey Carden of Carden and Cherry, his father, and his family, and the Barney family up in Lexington, and Jim's ex-wife / widow, Jamie, and the Jim Barney estate, to get everybody on the same page and say, hey, we're going to base this on Justin Lloyd's The Importance of Being Earnest, and we need all the family photos and all the behind-the-scenes stuff and interviews with you, and can we do this? And so now everybody finally is on board, and we're going to start the crowdfunding campaign in September, and really my main objective was to monetize it. Buster, he was my work father, really, like a dad, and his care now is going to cost a lot of money, and he's run through a lot of his money. So I wanted to generate some income from him, for him.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to watch, as it was with my mother. But an amazing thing, last Saturday, John Saxon passed away.
Oh, yeah.
The actor. Well,
yeah.
Went to visit Buster at his memory unit in Woodley, Tennessee. And there's this guy sitting at the lunch table with him, and we're eating, and he said, Daniel, this is John. And he said, and the guy had amazing eyes. I said, nice to meet you, John. We talk too loud, and we're overly kind. And we kept talking, and he said, Buster said, John was an actor like you. And I was going, oh, really? That's nice. And then Buster, he said, he's John Saxon. And I was like, and I looked back in those eyes, and he smiled. Yeah. And I just blurted out, why are you here? I mean, it's Brentwood, Tennessee, And John Saxon looked me in the eyes, and he had the most beautiful smile.
Yeah.
He reached over and he touched my hand, and he said, where is here? And he laughed. And you think, yes, it sounds achingly sad, but he was the only other guy on the unit. It's this beautiful new memory unit. So it really helped Buster. He was a Hollywood star. I'm a Hollywood director. Maybe this isn't so bad,
Yeah.
And he was the only other guy. And but John Saxon was just, his memory was, I wanted to ask him about every film and every co-star, and I realized his memory was totally gone. That chapter's closed. But he was so kind, and the staff loved him, and all the other old ladies loved him, and Buster loved him, and I fell in love with him because he was just so kind and gentle and grateful. And yet, just, not really there, But those eyes, dude.
Yeah.
Those eyes, seeing them in person, you feel them. That's all I can explain.
Yeah.
And that was a real honor and a privilege to meet him before he passed.
Yeah, and
it really helped out Buster.
Yeah, and I had tried to get in touch with Justin a year ago or so. I think he read the message but never got back to me. But I'll tell you something, irony of irony, right? Do you know Mary Jane Harville?
Oh, Mike Miller's wife wife.
Yes.
Yeah, Lance Sterling.
Yes. Well,
Yes.
Yes. Well, last summer, I reached out to her for an interview. She was very nice to me, and she said, her husband was dying at the time, and she said, you're going to have to wait, but keep checking in with me. And that's what I did for like a year, right? And then 2 days before you finally get back to me, I messaged her like a few days before that, and then 2 days before you messaged me, she replied me back, and she was very cold to me, and I was very disappointed, right?
Oh.
And so
yeah.
I called her out on it, right? And then I ended up blocking her because I was really upset that she built me up for like a year, and I feel bad that she lost her husband, but it's just she could have been a little bit nicer to me in that message, right?
Well, yeah.
So,
here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Mike and Mary Jane.
Yeah.
I did not do a lot of theater, but at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center, the big stage here in Nashville.
Yeah.
I got cast in, and this was before I was a writer for Ernest, The Importance of Being Ernest by Oscar Wilde. And I played the role of Algernon, and Mike Miller played Ernest. And Mary Jane, his wife, was also in the play.
Yeah.
And they were just amazing actors, and they had been trained, and they just carried me through that whole, 8-week production, and I fell in love with them. And then a couple of years, and then after Dr. Otto and Mike was Lance Sterling, and we were young married people having kids, and we were getting tight, and it's a long story, but my wife and my two sons, we were on the QE2, the Queen Elizabeth, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and a guy came over to our table in the dining room and said, "You have a phone call." And I was like, "A phone call? We're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean?"
Yeah.
So I'm immediately thinking, one of my parents died, and follow me, and we go up to the radio room, and it was Lynn Johnston who really ran Carden and Cherry and the Ernest shoots, and
right.
She was the woman that picked up Jim and woke him up, and she ran the joint. Mm-hmm. And it was Lynn Johnston, and she said, "Daniel, I thought I should call you." And I said, "What's going on, Lynn? Who died? What the hell?" And she said, "Mike Miller died." And Mike they lived out in the country, and he had on headphones and was driving his little pickup truck and crossing railroad tracks without a crossing guard, and got hit by a train and killed instantly. And that's hard to get over. And I think, and Mary Jane is she's a wonderful, just the most, she's just has a golden heart. And I'm sorry that happened to you, but she has, and it took years later, but she's remarried. Their daughter, Marin Miller, has become quite a young actress.
Yes.
And I'm sorry that happened, but maybe it's very hard.
Yeah, I'm not putting her down or anything. I'm sure she is a great lady. I mean, she seemed like it, for most of the year until that message happened. To go from saying, that she was interested in doing it to saying like I never did want to do it or something. I thought that was cold, and I just thought that wasn't necessary. But I get what you're saying though.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
And I apologize because
yeah.
I did the same thing to Dustin at Ernest, The Importance of Seeing Ernest, and David Marin at Ernest Goes to Podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it to you, but I mean, I'm about to turn 70. This is something I did 36 years ago.
Yeah.
And, and now in the documentary, trying to get some of the old crew working relationships, and Buster, and it was kind of hard seeing, Buster and Jim and Jerry become millionaires, and us eating bologna sandwiches. And also, I think with Mary Jane and the people in Denise Hicks and Bruce Arnson, who are great thespians, real actors.
Yeah,
it's like,
artistic integrity.
Yeah, and I found out I had to have two resumes.
Yeah.
One that had Ernest on it, and one that didn't have Ernest on it. I'll never forget going with Marty Hurligman in to talk to an NBC executive, and about an after-school special, using Ernest as an after-school special for NBC. Mm-hmm. And this guy was in charge of late night and specials. So at that time, he was working with Johnny Carson and David Letterman and after-school specials and yada, yada, yada. And we're going in to pitch Ernest, right? And the first words out of Marty introduces me, and the NBC vice president turns to me and he says, "So you really write that crap?" And it was like, "Yes, sir. Yeah, I do." And he said, "God, how do you sleep at night? And that stuff is crap." And you get that reaction.
Yeah.
And so I had to have two resumes. And there are a lot of people who don't want to admit, "Oh yeah, I did Ernest. I was in the Ernest movies." And it's looked down on.
I've been doing this podcast 3 years, Daniel. I've heard it all: working relationships, artistic integrity, about how they had to change resumes. I've heard all that stuff, and it can be disheartening, to the viewer and stuff, right? But I get it, because it's like working a normal job. You go through the same thing, in that world too, and so many people don't even realize that.
No, I know. It's pride. It's pride. But talking, Buster, we were up in New York. I forgot, and I was actually not working. I was on Dumbest Criminals, I think, at the time, and Buster was doing The Mummy in South Africa, and he had cast Murray Abrams, the Academy Award winner. And he said, "Hey, you want to have drinks with me and Murray Abrams?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it was my, I think it was 40th birthday, or I don't know, but I was feeling, having a birthday meltdown, oh my God, I'm old, it's all downhill from here that day.
Yeah.
And Murray he said, "Dan, it's all an internship until you turn 50, and then they let you do what you want." Yeah. But it was, Murray said something that blew my mind. He said, winning an Academy Award was the worst thing that ever happened to him. And I was like, "Well, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
He said, "I couldn't get work. Yeah. Everybody thought I would be too expensive. I would turn down. I wouldn't, I was too hoity-toity to pitch to or cast, and and that's why he ended up working on a movie with Buster,
Yeah.
So, the public really, the business is weird.
Who said that again?
Murray Abramson.
F. Murray Abraham.
Murray Abraham, excuse me.
Yes.
I'm old. What can I say?
Salieri in Amadeus. Yeah, he was brilliant in that film. He should have had a lot more great roles after that, but he's continued working at least.
Homeland. What he's doing in Homeland, what he did in Homeland.
Yeah.
Was, gosh, I hope I get to still be working at that age and be doing work at that caliber. He's incredible.
He's brilliant, yes. Well, Daniel, I have to say you've done a great job in the last 85 minutes or so, and I appreciate you coming on today. I hope that after all this is over, you can get back to being creative again.
Well, hey, I got
got to plug Ernest2020.com. We're going to start crowdfunding for the documentary, which we're doing that because there's so many Ernest fans out there. Investors said, that's like leaving money on the table. Ask them if they want to join. So we're starting crowdfunding for the importance of being Ernest, the Jim Varney story, the documentary. And we've already compiled just incredible research. And Justin actually had Jim Varney's first W-2 form from his first acting gigs. It's been an amazing journey just researching with those guys. But thank you for having me so much.
Absolutely. And stay safe because the world needs you, and have a great day.
You too, Tommy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. Daniel Butler. Ain't he a cool dude? Very nice man, and great stories, and remembers a lot, too. I just adore the man. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes. Know what I mean, Vern?